one of your neighbors.
Okay, it is 7 p.m., so I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'm going to ask everybody to stand, and before we say the Pledge of Allegiance, I would like all of us to take a moment of silence in remembrance of 9/11. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So I just came from the firemen versus law enforcement game. It was tied up 12-all. Pretty exciting game. So, Cheryl, will you take roll, please?
Yes. Councilmember Brenda Kinzer.
Present.
Councilmember Jermaine Cornegay.
Present.
Councilmember Chuck Owen.
Present.
Councilmember Judith Dunn.
Here.
Councilmember Carl DeYoung.
Here.
Councilmember Jared Couch.
Here.
And Councilmember Paula Kelly.
Here.
Okay, thank you. So, Council, I am looking for an approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilwoman Kelly, seconded by Councilwoman Cornegay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same motion? Or by same call? Okay. Now I'm looking for a motion for the consent agenda items 1 through 8.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 8.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilwoman Kinzer, seconded by Councilwoman Cornegay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. So we have a presentation tonight. It's a special presentation. I guess we should just expect this every year because it's been so phenomenal. What's this, the 10th, the 11th year that the wastewater treatment plant has received an outstanding award. So could I have them come forward, please? And Mark, would you join us as well? This is your team. So once again, the wastewater treatment plant has received an outstanding performance. It's a beautiful plaque. It's an award that they've actually been presented with. So I would like to read the letter. I was going to talk about how wonderful they are, but I think the letter really sums it up. And I think it's great to hear how other districts or other entities actually, this came from the Department of Ecology, how they view our wastewater treatment plant and the team that has done such an outstanding job of making this happen. So it says, to the Honorable Julia Johnson. It says, Dear Mayor Johnson, congratulations on receiving the Outstanding Wastewater Treatment Plant Award for 2018, which makes me look good. I did nothing except support them. The Department of Ecology Northwest Regional Office praises the City of Sedro-Woolley for their superior performance in its wastewater treatment plant. The Sedro-Woolley wastewater treatment plant has an outstanding record among the top municipal wastewater treatment plants in Washington, based on effluent limits, submittable, and overall plant compliance. The team for the Sedro-Woolley wastewater treatment plant should be commended for their perseverance, dedication, and award-winning efforts. It is with great endeavor that they operate and maintain the wastewater treatment plant in a top running order 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We appreciate the hard work and the commitment that goes into the compliance, operations and maintenance, engineering, administrative support, and management all contribute to fulfill the terms and conditions of your NPDES permit. Ecology and the state of Washington are grateful for your community's contribution to safeguarding the prized environmental, social, and economic benefits of Washington State's waters. We look forward to continuing excellent in years to come. Please present the enclosed plaque, which I am honored to do. Sincerely, Rachel McCrae of the Water Quality Section Management. team.
So on behalf of our staff, I just want to thank all of you, our council members who support us year after year with funding that enables us to be able to make clean water, and the management team as well. We appreciate all that you do as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we will move into staff reports. So, Chief
Got
Tucker?
it. I'll introduce Sergeant Harris, and we'll get him rolling here.
All right, all right.
So one of the things that we wanted to share with the council is we've talked a lot about the proactive policing, and really Sergeant Harris, that's his role. He's the sergeant in charge of investigations. So if we have a major crime, that's his gig, and he supervises the sole detective that we have. Jason's been a detective in the past, and he's done this proactive role before, but we'd never really officially turned it into an official position as a proactive approach sergeant until just this year. One of the things that we've found is that actively going after the bad guys with our limited manpower that we have is actually a much better taking an offensive approach against the crime instead of being more reactive is actually is really the only way we can do it with the resources that we have. And one of the things that it's really helping us with is identifying our problems. We've partnered up with the Upper Skagit Tribal Police on a couple things. We're constantly in contact with other agencies, and we're trying to nip this in the bud rather than just waiting for things to happen. So Sergeant Harris has got kind of just an overview of what he's been doing just this year. If we want to go back historically and kind of set things in perspective, when Jason was doing this as a detective back in 2012, 2013 timeframe, we actually had to go out of town to buy drugs from drug dealers. Our confidential informants couldn't find a dealer in town, so we actually ran them all out in the county. And that's really, honestly, that is the goal of all our crime prevention, is make it go away. We want them arrested, the bad guys put away, the problem solved, the right people put away. But really is we're trying to make it out of our area. And Jason's been tasked with going after everything that affects the city of Sedro-Woolley. If it's outside the city limits, and he'll show you a little thing on kind of an approach on Clear Lake that he took. Anything that's affecting us, he's been kind of given the green light to go after. So I'm going to turn it over to Sergeant Harris, and he's going to sit right here because he's kind of shy, and he doesn't want to get up in front of everybody.
That and Dean said I could, so that's got to be a win. Thank you all for taking time to listen to this. So proactive policing, and the slides up there are kind of hard to read from at least my vision. But what is it? It is where we identify people or businesses that are involved in illegal activity that impacts the health and safety of the citizens of Sedro-Woolley. So in short, we take the fight to the criminals. We don't wait, as Chief Tucker said, we don't wait for them to do it. We go after them first. How do we do it? We compile raw data from officer contacts, informant contacts, citizen complaints that help us identify the illegal activity in and around the city. Once we've identified it, then we verify the target. We begin to dismantle whatever activity they're doing, depending on, and that could be a lot of different things. We touch base on drugs. Drugs is a factor in a lot of crimes, from homicide to petty theft. Drugs are involved in. By going after the drug dealer, we're also taking out the people that take in stolen property from your vehicle prowls, your burglaries, those type of things, where they trade for drugs. So it's kind of a twofer when we do that route. So as Chief Tucker indicated, I got moved into this position earlier this year. And by keeping the pressure on the known criminals, one of three things happen, and we've proven this. They stop committing the crime, they move out of the city, or we arrest them. We refer to that as the 3 R's. They rehabilitate, relocate, or reincarcerate. And that's been pretty effective. So this is a photograph from an operation we did earlier this year. It was about 2 blocks from the Sedro-Woolley High School. It took us about 4 weeks to do. There's 2 to 5 officers working the controlled buys. We knew about the assault weapons in the house, so we had the sheriff's office SWAT team come in and secure the scene for us. This forced us to put the high school in lockout because of the close proximity to the school. We recovered 3 handguns, 2 assault rifles, 6.5 ounces of heroin with a street value of $7,800. And a quarter ounce of meth with a street value of $150. And we seized $2,357 in cash. And when we served the warrant that morning, that's exactly how we found the guns. We made them safe, but they're all lying on the suspect's bed. This is where we found the majority of the drugs. It was in the toilet tank container. This is a common place. We looked there a lot, but the canine actually hit on it, which was pretty exciting for the dog handler. This was another operation we did. This one was literally 2 blocks from Mary Purcell and Central. We did 3 controlled buys. It took us about 3 weeks, using 2 to 4 officers, depending on what we had going on. We were buying basically a quarter ounce of heroin, and those are the prices we were spending: $200, $350, and $350. Clear Lake, Chief Tucker kind of touched base on this. So we had one of our residents overdose and died late last year. We were getting information that and he had died from a fentanyl overdose, and we got information that the pills were purchased out in Clear Lake. So we got that going. We ended up buying drugs and pills and stuff out in Clear Lake. We bought meth, prescription pills, and pressed pills. The blue ones are the homemade pills that have fentanyl in them. Those we sent to the crime lab, and those tested positive for fentanyl. And fentanyl, the size of a grain of sand will kill you if you touch it. It's very, very dangerous. This is Clear Lake continued. This was right inside. This was the living room coffee table. Most coffee tables don't look this way. There's a loaded, the handgun was stolen. It was loaded, one in the chamber and a full magazine right where the guy was sitting.
And before Jason goes on, one thing that he can't really share other than this picture is the smell. We've got a nasty den. I think were chickens living in there too?
Yeah, chickens were living upstairs.
Chickens were living in the house, and our dealers were living downstairs in this kind of squalor. But this isn't that uncommon for what these guys are finding. This is what we're seeing. Actually, we had one house that we did a drug buy on this year that was actually fairly clean. It was the first one I had ever seen. I mean, they all look like a college dorm room that has had an explosion happen inside of it, and they smell horrible. These are the kind of things that ruin homes, and they damage the very foundation of the homes, ruin the walls, they let things go, they let meat rot. We just checked a house that we just cleared out probably a month ago, and just down the road from the mayor's house, and it smells like something's dead in there. And this is kind of our common thing. It's just pretty horrible, and this is what we run into all the time.
In amongst the stuff on the coffee table were all sorts of drugs. I mean, you name it, it was all in that table. It was pretty nasty. In addition to buying drugs, we recovered 3 handguns. One was stolen, 3 shotguns, an AR-15, and a Ruger 10/22. We also found this Kubota tractor that was outside. That the dealer, we found a receipt that he purchased this $42,000 tractor for $400 cash and $600 worth of heroin. So he got, and this tractor had 25 hours on it. So it was a brand new tractor. So needless to say, the folks that own that, they were the ones installing the cell tower. They were very happy to get that back. We also recovered stolen chainsaws and a couple other things, along with just a lot of ammunition that this guy, being a convicted felon, is not supposed to have either. What else we do? So we do pawn compliance checks. So what that entails is where we go and buy 3 like products, new products, and we have somebody go in and pawn them at the pawn shops to make sure that the pawn owners are following the rules. That's been pretty effective. We've had other cities and other counties follow our lead on that measure, just because that has been a problem in the past. All of our 3 shops, they know we do it. They understand why we do it, and they're very positive to work with us, which is nice. We're going to start. We got these sandwich board signs. We're going to start doing. It's just been a busy summer, and now with school starting, but we're going to be doing crosswalk emphasis to where we're going to put the sign out. I'll be walking across a crosswalk, and hopefully I don't get hit. If someone almost hits me, I'm going to have an unmarked unit pull them over and have a chitty chat. So that will be coming up, and we'll do that several times throughout the year.
Thank you for the warning.
A summary. So this year, we've done 12 controlled buys from 5 different drug dealers. We've taken a total of just over half an ounce of meth off the street, which is a $900 street value roughly. We've taken 8 ounces of heroin, which is almost $10,000 street value. A bunch of different prescription and homemade pills, and we grabbed 8 pounds of marijuana at a one spot. We've spent $2,040 cash money buying the illegal drugs. We've seized $2,582 cash from the dealers. So we're funding ourselves kind of to keep it moving, which kind of helps. We've taken 13 guns off the street this year, 6 handguns, 2 AR-15s, 1 AK-47, 3 shotguns, and a 10/22. We've got that $42,000 tractor, again, that he got basically for $1,000. 1 stolen handgun and some chainsaws. Any questions?
I have to say thank you very much. You know, it's because I just always assume that it's a safe neighborhood, and sometimes we really don't know what's happening just a few doors down. But it's disturbing when it's really close to the school. I live close to one of the schools, and so it's disturbing when you think about those kinds of illicit drugs could be available to young adults. It's disturbing. So thank you for the work you do.
Thank you.
I have a question for you, if that's okay. What are the numbers compared to last year?
I haven't compiled that.
Just curious. Thanks.
Last year was kind of hit or miss on not having a dedicated PROAC unit. Jason was a patrol sergeant then, so really his focus was on patrol sergeant duties. So it's almost like having the difference between just a kind of a broad beam and a narrow spotlight. Jason's able to sometimes apply that. Today he's in uniform. He's had to be our backup patrolman because we've got an officer doing EVOC training this week, and we're short one, so Jason's filling in for that. But we didn't have the PROAC position last year, and we really it was if we lucked into something. And we find these kind of things all the time. We're stopping people that are using and people that have possession of something illegal, drugs or a stolen handgun or something. We're running into those people all the time, just in the normal course of affairs. When we don't have a PROAC unit, we don't have anybody to exploit that. So when they run into that, the patrol officer can start doing some interviewing, flip them, and see where it goes from there. And Jason is the guiding light on that.
I just remembered something I thought similar, maybe it was a few years ago, that you guys were doing when you were talking about going out and buying the drugs so that you could do, but that wasn't quite to this level, is what you're saying.
Well, it's been quite a while since I've done that. It was probably at least 5-6 years ago when I was in detectives doing that role, when the chief indicated that we couldn't buy any drugs in town, but that was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
So why don't you kind of share, because I know, but why don't you share with others in case they don't know what it requires, because you're it as far as the title, But who do you have to pull in, and how does that impact the city then? Or maybe the chief could even answer that when we do these kinds of raids, or you do these kinds of raids.
You want to do it?
Well, I guess, what's it taking to do this?
Right.
What it takes is time and people. Like right now, tonight, we have 2 patrol officers and 1 sergeant on. And I was actually shagging calls with them earlier. So we don't really have anybody to exploit anything that comes up. But what we've done is anytime an officer finds a good source of information, it depends on the officer. We got a couple officers that are really good at it, and the rest of them say, I'm not really good at this, but I know somebody who is. So they'll stop somebody, they'll arrest somebody, bring them back to the office, they'll start talking, and we'll start developing information off that. And sometimes that information isn't even for us. I mean, we develop information that works for, might relate to something at the Upper Skagit or Mount Vernon or Burlington, and we try to find ways to share that. The county has a PROAC unit that is dedicated in the same way, but they've only got two guys, and they're associated with a lot bigger, broader scale things. But really, we got a couple officers that are really good at this, that are feeding Jason information, and then he starts coming in with a plan to exploit that, and then we'll have him on day shift most of the time. But whenever he finds that he needs to go buy drugs, he downshifts and works a night shift, or goes home at noon, comes back at dark, and's here till midnight, and they'll go out and exploit that and be hooking people up and bringing it back in. So you have to have a lot of flexibility and the ability to adjust, and Jason has the authority to call in the troops. He's got all the phone numbers for all the people he needs. I'm trying to get some of the county PROAC folks on board. We work closely with Jared and his crew up on the Upper Skagit. We'll pull from anywhere that we need. We used to borrow one of the other city cars, and we would change the license plates and put a paper bag over the window and all that, make it look a little shadier, and go out and do surveillance with that. That's what we always keep one of the vehicles that we seize, and we use it for just watching what goes on. That's why we picked up the night vision, so we can watch some of that stuff at night too. So there's a lot of moving parts in this, but what it's always taken is one person to run with it, and one person to run it. We got a lot of people that can start it, but no one that can see it through. That's what Jason's job is.
Okay. Thank you.
He's the quarterback of the PROAC team.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to ask Sergeant Harris a question. Do you think the drug problem is getting better, or is it getting worse? Or
In my career, it's the same. It's really not any different than when I started 15 years ago. It's just times change, prices change. The flavor of the month changes, but it's all there. It's all there.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to ask, have you seen a decrease in the number of car prowls and thefts and things like that?
We have in the past, and and we actually have proven that in the past, and that's where we want to get back to now. So initially, our numbers will go up just because we're out there being proactive and getting them, but in the long term, they're going to die down. And we do start targeting the fences that people are taking in the stolen property. When we seize property on these type of raids, I'll keep that, and I'll trade either cash and some stolen property to the drug dealer to get nexus to looking for stolen property and prove that they are taking that in. So that's one of the elements that we use to our advantage to help. And it's been very effective before, so I can only assume it will continue to be.
Well, that's really appreciated. I don't think people realize how big of an impact that has on people until it hits home.
Right.
And I've personally been a victim of one of these people you took off the streets twice, so I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Well, and anybody can be a victim. And kind of a funny story, years ago, before Jason was on board with doing this kind of stuff, another detective was doing it. Mark Wallace was doing this years ago, and he was serving a search warrant at a drug dealer near where he lived down off Fidalgo Street. He found his toolbox in the house that he was searching for. He didn't even know it was missing. It had been stolen from his little broke-down Suzuki Samurai in the backyard. And he's like, this looks familiar. And he calls his wife, and she looks, yeah, there's no toolbox in the truck anymore, and he's got it back. So those kind of things happen all the time. We're seeing people driving around. They live in their car and they've got $1,000 worth of chainsaws in their car, and they don't run chainsaws for a living. Doesn't make sense to me. So we start asking more questions. And that's what we have to have is the ability to do that, to stop what we're doing. You pretty much have to shut everything else down and focus on that. So when the officer finds that kind of thing at night, they can focus on that. And Jason gets calls at home all the time. He gets calls from shadier people who he's got on the hook. He says, you need to call me, and if you don't call me by tomorrow, I'm going to file those charges on you. And they'll call him back, and he's testing their veracity and seeing if they're going to carry through with things and seeing if they can be used. And we try to use them. One of our main concerns is to use them safely. So Jason comes up with plans on how to do this safely. We have to have safety for officers, but we also own that person that we are working with, and we kind of own their safety. So we have to have plenty of people to do that, and plenty of people to carry out the mission effectively. And it's an effective process going after the bad guys, and the bad guys start thinking we are hunting them all the time. They're going to be finding somewhere else to go. Burlington or Mount Vernon, not our problem. We'll send them that way any time of the day.
All right. Any more questions? Did you have a question?
I just want to make one comment.
Okay.
Sergeant Harris, worked together with you professionally a lot, and you're the industry standard. And I just hope that this city, with Proposition 1 coming up, I hope we're able to fund more positions to get you some help because you do amazing work, and I don't think a lot of people understand the undertaking that proactive policing is. Those late night phone calls and when you're at home, you're not always off duty, and so
that's true.
We greatly appreciate you and the work you do.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I'm sorry, no. You could say something, though, during public comment, which is coming up shortly. Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for all the work that you are doing.
Yep. The only other thing I've got is we made a job offer to the number one guy on our list.
Nice.
We've made a job offer to Brandon Murdoch. He's fresh out of the Marines. It was so cool to see somebody pop to attention when I walked in the room. I'm almost thinking I want to try to get these guys to do it, but I don't think they'll do it. Klinger might, but the rest of them won't do it. Brandon Murdoch's brother Josh works for the sheriff's office now, and Brandon's sister Carissa works Burlington Police Department. We got the little baby Murdoch straight out of the Marines, and we're going to be hopefully putting him in the police academy in December, and we're making another job offer to another young man once his background gets finished. And if all things work out, either December or January, put them both in the same academy class.
All right.
So we'll have 2 brand new officers as soon as we can.
And this is actually bringing you back up because you're down 2 officers right now, correct?
Right, yeah, we have Officer Rogers who's leaving at about, I can't read my watch very well without my glasses, but about 3 or 4 days. And then Officer Pierce, who's going to be retiring as soon as he can to drive a bus. And we're going to stay even and still be behind 1 if we can't find another one off this list. So we'll still be short 1 if we get these 2 hired and those 2 leave.
All right, thank you.
That's it.
Okay. Mr. Freiberger.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things with projects that are going on around town. Our Public Works Operations crew completed the pavement on the Puget Street crossing, just at Northern Street, with railroad crossing that we lowered. They also completed the track removal east of Township, and so all of the crossings are now gone. So that's a good thing. And we're still working with BNSF to get the track removed between State and Ferry. We understand they've got that scheduled. That'll happen at some point, but that's moving along well. We appreciate the support of BNSF on doing that. You awarded tonight the Borseth Robinson Sewer Project. Bids came in well under David's estimate for that, and we're moving forward with that. We hope to start the work in October and complete that by the end of November. The sidewalk and ramp project continues. They've finished the work down by the high school, and they're working over on Murdoch Street right now, down near the parking lot north of State. And that project will complete in about another 30 days as well. And let's see, the operations crew also worked with Rotary to pour 2/3 of the new patio behind the community center. They'll finish that tomorrow. That'll complete the Rotary project for this year. And next year they have the kitchen remodel plan for that facility, so it's a very good thing. Also, the chip seal project was completed. I'm not sure if we were done with that the last time we met, but that's done around town. They're going to come back and do a fog seal, which is basically an asphalt coating on top of it to make it look more like asphalt when they're done. They've already completed that on Orth Way and a couple of other places. We are getting a few community complaints about that. Folks don't really understand that our toolbox on doing those local access streets, especially the dead-end ones, is pretty limited. There's not much funds available. And so, of course, folks would prefer a nice asphalt overlay, but we're doing the best we can to keep these streets preserved. So you'll likely hear something. I understand there's a bit of a neighborhood petition going on about that over there now. So anyway, just to let you know that. That's all I had. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Berg?
Thank you. So the library projects are progressing nicely. We're continuing to be on schedule and on budget. You probably, if you drove by or walked by today, saw the concrete truck pouring foundation footings. I put on your dais what I'm going to call a preview read or a pre-first reading read of a resolution that would establish policies for the use of the new reader board sign, as well as the banners that we stretch across Ferry Street, and much more minor, but our bulletin boards in City Hall. We're really pretty interested in having a policy in place before we start putting up non-city messages on the reader board, so kind of hoping that this may be something the council would act on at the next meeting. You'll see it's much more detailed than what we've had in the past, but it really outlines how people gain access, who would qualify. The only piece of this puzzle that's presently missing is would be the format requirements for the reader board. My hope for that would be that folks could bring in an electronic version what they want, so we're not spending staff time to create graphic design work for folks. The only change really to current practice with regard to the banners is that we are proposing a fee for the use of the banner to cover the staff time required to put the banner up and take the banner down. So that's something for the City Council to think about. Currently, there is no fee. There's no process. In fact, it's just kind of usually Lago Rodeo does it about this time, and the farmers market does it about that time, and it happens. This would formalize that a little bit and require the payment of $100 to get your banner up and down, and also details exactly the specifications for the banner. With regard to the message board, we do have an existing interlocal agreement with the school district. That's referenced in the policy regarding the priority of signage, messaging. But we'll have the opportunity to put a lot more messages up. So a retired council member, Limley, is pretty excited. I told him he could take the first swing with the excavator on the reader board sign to take it down, which I believe operations is going to do next week. So that sign will be gone and no longer be tempted to keep putting messages up. But we'll have the ability to put many more messages up, because that one was one at a time, and there was really limited space. So there's quite a bit more creativity available. So are there any questions? I know I emailed it to you earlier. If you had a chance to look at it, I'd be certainly happy to talk about it now.
Aaron, I do have some comments here for you. In looking it over, there was one where the uses that were not allowed included personal messages for family members. We have often in the past put up returning servicemen and women's having an acknowledgement on the board, like
Welcome home, Corporal, Woolley, or whatever.
So that would be something that I think that we would still receive requests from the public for. And down on the next page where it talks about the reader board and the following information must be provided. My question was, in what format will the messages be accepted? Are they allowed to use colors and graphics? And there's a mention of a sketch of the proposed sign. I'm not sure I would find that to be an effective use of time. Maybe a preliminary draft for review makes more sense. Or is the intent for the city personnel to spend their time adding graphics, which you just said that's not the intent there?
And so that procedure that you're looking at specifically, I think the sketch in particular would be more for the banner location, so we can clean that up, make that clear.
So it's not the reader board, it's the banner?
That's what I would think would make sense, because before they go out and pay to have a physical sign manufactured, we want to see it, is really the concept there. Gotcha. For the reader board, I'd say kind of going to the last page, probably tie in the reader board message format, and or I'll pull that over to the application section maybe to make that more clear. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because the reader board messages are limited to what, it's still in yellow there.
Right.
And then the next one about
that's only because I don't know exactly those requirements yet. So we're still getting trained up and to understand the operations of that sign.
Okay. And my last comment was that the bulletin board postings were limited to 8.5 by 11 inches. What about event posters?
We don't post those on our City Hall bulletin board just because it's too small. So we really do have.
So you're just putting those in the windows and the.
Yeah. Personally, I don't love that look. It might be nice at some point to have kind of an event poster location, but we are much more limited in the event poster at City Hall, primarily to Sedro-Woolley specific events, and for the most part, those that the city's a co-sponsor of.
Is there any way to make use of the new signage out in the vestibule between the front doors?
Maybe. So that's actually owned by the library, and so that's just circulating the library events. I guess that'd be a question for our library district director to find out if there's a way we could feather other events into it. I don't know the answer to that question. At this point, it's library-only events on that.
Yeah, those are my comments. So, thank you.
Okay.
Absolutely. Aaron, what type of program is it that runs that reader board?
I think it's actually a proprietary program by Watchfire, but I don't know for sure. So we've got 2 members of our staff training on it on Friday, and the school district has 2 members of their staff that are doing the same thing, and it has a user guide and all that. So I don't know.
I'm wondering if there's any way to integrate it onto our website also, because obviously nobody's going to see all the messages on the board when they drive by. If there's a way to post it on the website also.
Yeah, it's a good question. I can find out.
I had a question about the brightness. I didn't see, I might have missed it in here, but as bright as it is right now, is that about as bright as it's going to get? Because that actually isn't bad.
Well, hopefully it's really good. And you drive by and it's aesthetically pleasing and eye-catching all at once. I think it depends on the message. I mean, in terms of how much light might be in a particular image, with the color palette, but I don't think the brightness I don't anticipate that will change.
Okay, I'm really hoping not.
Anyone else? Those are good questions and comments. Thank you.
All right, so I'll do some updating based upon what I've heard tonight, and I'll have that on your agenda for next time. I will not be at the next council meeting, so it should be faster, so good for you. And we'll catch back up with you in October. Thank you.
John will be here.
Thank you. Mr. Merriman.
I'll have to find something to take up Aaron's time then so we can still be around. I have a couple of items really just to update you on our budget process for 2020. Our first public hearing is going to be at our next city council meeting on September 25th. So we'll be taking a walk through how our revenues are looking so far this year and what we're looking at projecting for 2020. That will be item number one. Item number two is our lodging tax request forms have gone out, and what we're doing is for our annual grant program, which uses lodging tax money to fund it, we'll be accepting applications through about the third week of this month. We'll then be convening the lodging tax committee to be looking at those and screening those and seeing what awards we're going to do for next year. And the third and last item I have is yesterday we heard from the Municipal Research Service Center, that's MRSC. That's a group that does a lot of work for cities. They're based down in Seattle, and they released the implicit price deflator. And that's a measure of economic growth and things.
It's exciting stuff, folks.
Yeah, hold on to your hats. So it's coming out, but it came out at 1.396, and that's an important number for us. But what I'm going to do is keep you on the edge of your seats until our next council meeting, and we'll talk about how that affects our budget for next year, especially in the area of property taxes. And that's all that I have for tonight.
So, Doug, did you say defibrillator?
This is one where IPD is much easier to say, but it's implicit price deflator. And this is one that, through state law several years ago, was determined to be the correct measure for economic growth. And so that's the one that we use when we talk about city revenues and property taxes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Councilman Couch.
Just a quick note, I will be in Spokane training during our next council meeting, so I won't be here.
Okay.
If needed, I can phone in for the meeting. Other than that, I just want to ask Chief Tucker, have we gotten a score update from the softball game between police and fire?
Well, sorry to say, the fire department got trounced. It was 19-15. The police department won.
That's all I have.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for asking.
Councilman Owen?
I don't have anything.
All right. Councilwoman Cornegay.
I was curious too, so thank you for asking. I just wanted to make everyone aware today is Suicide Prevention Day as well as 9/11. And our Sedro-Woolley Police Department is, I found working on a prevention program already with the county and Mount Vernon, am I right? And so thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing that, and remember to reach out to folks and find out how they're doing. Another thing is this Saturday on the 14th at 10 a.m., the Skagit Trail Builders are working on the trail up again at Northern State property. So you meet at the Veterans Park and just kind of walk up. It's about a 15-minute walk from the parking lot right there. They provide lunch, and kids are welcome.
Thank you. Councilwoman Kinzer?
Nothing tonight.
Okay. Councilman DeYoung?
Thank you. Tomorrow I'm attending as a representative for the city of Sedro-Woolley to the Skagit Watershed Council, and that should be a few hours with 40 other groups talking about salmon restoration, salmon enhancement, water quality, bank restoration. Madam Mayor, I had some thoughts on 9/11. Would you indulge me now, or should I wait for good of the order?
Go ahead.
Thank you. And I appreciate everyone's patience. Never forget. We remember where we stood when we saw the towers fall. We remember the bravery of first responders running towards the rubble to save lives and risk their own. Today, we rededicate ourselves to the future worthy of those lost. Never forget. Thinking of all those who lost their lives in the terrorist attacks of 9/11, the people who love them or will grow up wishing they had had the chance. And all the women and men who stood up and embraced their neighbors and strangers and said, the United States is not a country that can be divided by hate. This is my country and your country, the one that we need to keep fighting for. Never forget. Thank you.
Councilwoman Dunn? Okay. Councilwoman Kelly?
I would just like to suggest that we honor Rick for his work on that signboard.
I think that's a great suggestion.
In
it's on my list.
Snow and rain and mud and muck and sideways. He's done it all, and he's done it for probably at least 20 years. So,
do we have a picture of him by any chance putting the letters up?
Yeah.
Because it would be kind of fun to run that on the new electronic message board.
Yeah. I don't have one, but
we should have him do one last message and get a photo of it.
Good idea.
Ta-da! So yeah, we were talking about.
How about one that says, "Check out new sign at Bingham Park."
That's good. Okay, anything? Yes.
Mayor Johnson.
Yes.
Wasn't Bob Hickman involved in that also?
That's a good question.
I think that's the school district
okay.
side.
The school district side, okay.
Yeah, there's two halves to the sign, but see, the school district uses a bucket truck, so Bob gets only half a thank you. I mean, it's a good thank you, but it's not as much work as standing there with the pole. He gets to go up in the bucket. You know, it's like luxury work.
All right. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So we will move on to public comments. It is 7:46. I'm going to open up public comment. Please give your name and address and try to keep it to 3 minutes. So is there anybody for public comment?
Three.
I need to give my address to you.
Yeah, name and address. Yes, name and address.
Sandra Tucker Miller, and I live at 30917 State Route 20.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm here today just to suggest something for the old library building.
Okay.
We would like to see that it could be used for an art center.
Oh, okay.
Because the Sedro-Woolley is very dedicated to community growth and support, and there are amazing sports facilities, the skate park, but there's really nowhere that the people who like to do arts, and especially for children, to gather and have classes going on, after school courses. And I just want to make a point of saying that I just found out today that the Gail Harker Center for Creative Arts will be having their grand opening in La Conner. And the Jensen Art Center has been going on now for about 7 years in Linden and is very successful, bringing in international artists, and it brings in tourists, it brings in income, and it supports the local artists as well. And it's addressing a section of the community that's really not being attended to, I feel, at this time. So.
All right, thank you.
What she said.
Okay.
I'm Carol Walker, 1013 North Fruitdale Road, and I'm part of this little art group that says, please give us a home. And I would like to read a petition that is going around, if you just let me do that. It's really, really brief. It states, we, the undersigned, feel there's a tremendous need for the arts, both visual and performing, in Sedro-Woolley. Our city and the surrounding area are rich in artistic talent, be it as an artist, artisan, or performer, yet there's no central location to provide the community access to the arts. In part, this is due to a lack of available and affordable space for meetings, workshops, rehearsals, showings, and performances. It is our belief that the current library, located at 802 Ball Street, would be an excellent location for an arts enrichment center. This would potentially allow for the creation of a collaboration of meetings within the arts, classes, educational programs for adults, rehearsals and performances, gallery showings, and after-school and summer art programs for children. A well-rounded community includes ample opportunity to regularly enjoy recreational sports and the arts. Currently, Sedro-Woolley has a skate park, basketball court, ballparks, numerous general use parks, including 2 new ones that are in the works down the road from me. There's a community center, a senior center, and the dogs even have a park. But there's no home for the arts. We respectfully request the Sedro-Woolley City Council members to use serious consideration for an arts center when determining the use for the future, soon-to-be former library located at 802 Ball Street. And if you have any other information you need to help me encourage you, let me know, and I'll be glad to find the answers and bring it back.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for your time.
Yeah, great suggestion.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Is it possible to give them a suggestion now?
Go ahead.
Okay, so there are arts happening at the senior center, and ceramics and painting, and I would encourage you to talk with Ellen Schweigert there at the senior center, and I think it would be a great place for your group to go and as a pilot project to see what kind of demographics and folks would be interested that would give us then data as the council to move forward with your suggestion. And I believe Chuck, is that right? There is a weekly arts and crafts that go on at the senior center, and additionally, there's a painting by so-and-so, I'm not going to give a plug to a business, sorry, that does go around to certain businesses in the Central Business District and does put on painting shops as well. But I would be happy to work with you on finding some places and moving forward with that. Arts are very important. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Go ahead.
The key here is affordable, because the senior center,
$25.
we have to research, the senior center costs money to rent if you want to have a meeting, if you want to teach a class, and artists, musicians, performers typically spend whatever money they can squeeze back into their art.
Okay.
So we're looking for an affordable home.
Yeah, so I think sounds like discussion that can continue. Yeah, it sounds like your needs are great. So, right. So we can have this discussion after the meeting?
Oh, okay.
All right. I'd be happy to talk with you after the meeting. All right, thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Carol Torsett from 718 Jennings Street. And I just want to thank the police department and the Crime Watch for watching my house while I was on a month-long vacation out of the country. Number one, they did a good job. They even started a whole week early while I was still there. I also wanted to share that a lady on Metcalf Street at the end of the road here had a broken wheelchair ramp. And the Lions Club was contacted to see what they could do about it. Now, our club is small, and there's an awful lot of older people in our club who even use wheelchair ramps. So we had to go out and put together a program to get that ramp fixed. And we partnered with E&E Lumber, with BYK, who made a donation to us, with the Carpenters Union, who brought over trainees, I think, to do the work according to code, and that wheelchair ramp got finished here in the last couple of weeks. So I just want to let you know that the Lions Club facilitated that.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Alan Henderson. I live at 814 Ferry Street.
All right.
I wanted to start by asking, are we going to have public comment after the slideshow for the sales and tax fees for affordable and supportive housing?
No.
Or is this it? Okay.
This is a presentation that we're going to be having, yeah.
So no comment afterwards?
No.
Okay. Well, shoot. I was hoping I'd have a little bit more time to prepare. Just a couple of things I noticed here about this. It looks like we won't have any increased sales taxes based on the tax credit against state sales taxes. So it will be used to assist persons whose income is at or below 60% of city median income. I didn't find in the packet where that city median income was defined. So I had a question on that, if anybody could pull that up for me.
So we're going to be doing a presentation, and that's actually a question that actually, if it's not answered in the presentation or here, we can find an answer for you.
Okay.
All right.
And then a couple other questions here. I'm reading as I go. We're looking to add more housing to the city with these funds. Is that correct?
We haven't determined any of that yet. This is all just, we're just in the talking stages.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for me then.
Well, I'm glad you show an interest in it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah.
Since you're, my name is Pat Hayden and I live at 109 Warner. Since you're going to not have questions or comment afterwards, I just want to say that I have worked a lot with affordable housing and volunteer lawyer programs. I used to work for self-help housing. I would like to ask you to pay attention to any comments on what's called supportive housing. I'm currently working with a mentally ill tenant being evicted. Her behavior is such that she really can't live in a standard apartment building. The police come frequently to her house because of her own mental disabilities. The examples are schizophrenia, autism, manic depression. There are a number of people who simply cannot live and get along well with neighbors through no fault of their own. There are many people who can't get along through their own fault. But in this case, I've become aware of the needs for mentally ill people to live in, to participate in a program called supportive housing. We, as near as I can tell, we don't have that program in Skagit County. We don't have a dedicated supportive housing situation for mentally ill people. And I may be wrong about that. I know there are private housing for mentally disabled people. But this is for developmentally disabled people. But supportive housing will provide some kind of sheltered, assisted living for people with mental illnesses who did not acquire them through drug addiction or through problems that would be willful. These are just people who don't have a full deck of cards through no fault of their own. And so the person I'm working with in Burlington, who has taken up lots of police time, lots of fire department time, lots of EMS time, and needs that kind of housing, has to go to Whatcom County to find it. There's a program in Linden I'm trying to get her into. It's subsidized rent, it's cheaper. She essentially has to be on Medicaid to be able to afford it, and I think she will qualify for Medicaid. She wasn't, but we're getting her on Medicaid. So when you listen to this program, I would appreciate it if you'd pay attention to that section that might support supportive housing in Skagit County. It's a program that we really need. I doubt that it would be located in Sedro-Woolley per se, but if it is a county-wide program, our residents could participate in that if they had needs. Affordable housing is a controversial subject with a lot of political issues involved. I don't want to get into that. I'm just saying that supportive housing is something that we really need in this county for people who have genuine mental illnesses acquired through no personal fault or behavioral problem of their own. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes?
Hi, my name's Aaron DeBoer. I actually live in Burlington, just outside of city limits here a little ways, and do the majority of my business actually here in Sedro-Woolley. But I'm here today
I'm sorry, could you do your address too for us, please?
8426 District Line Road, Burlington, 98233. I'm here today to talk about the possible city ordinance to allow ATVs and UTVs on city streets. As you know, the city of Lyman passed it a few years ago, and just about every city in Snohomish County has passed an ordinance. I just read today that the whole county actually passed for 35 mile per hour and under roads. What I see it brings to Sedro-Woolley is a recreation opportunity for a group of people with UTVs. They bring commerce to the city. A very popular thing that I see is families like to go out to breakfast in the morning and walk the downtowns of the cities and park their UTV on the street. So see a lot of opportunity for downtown businesses for people to go to. So Yeah, and I haven't heard of any negativity from any of the cities in Snohomish County since they passed them, and pretty much county-wide Snohomish is all for it, and Lyman as well for Skagit. Brought a sample ordinance from the city of Monroe, if anybody wants to see it, and yeah.
You can leave the ordinance up here if you like. We'll make sure that, that everybody sees it.
All right.
Is there any other comment you'd like to make?
No, that's it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mayor, I would just mention that sort of consistent with what I shared with the council at the last meeting, my intent is you'll have on your agenda at the next meeting 2 ordinances, one that would specifically authorize the city-owned WATV, wheeled all-terrain vehicle, and a second ordinance that would open that up to others that are comply with state law. And I did learn since our last meeting that we are not required to put a license plate or register our city-owned WATV. So you'll see it cruising around with the big Sedro-Woolley fire on the side, and that's totally legal according to Department of Licensing.
All right, thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Yes?
Hey, Jermaine, can I get the water? Dennis O'Neill. Is this working? Yes. Dennis O'Neill residing at 109 Talcott Street. And I just had a question. A couple of years ago, I was asking about how many citations were issued for crosswalk violations, and I'm still wondering what that recent number might be for 2018 and 2019, but I don't want it answered right now since it's on my time. I also have a question on that Proposition 1. I read it down at the courthouse, and it says the reason for it is continuous law enforcement. It seems a little bit like a scary type of way to word a tax. When there's $490-some thousand in the city council discretionary fund, if there was really an emergency for law enforcement, maybe it should be taken from there instead of raising taxes on people that are least able to afford it, especially when everybody's talking about a recession. Let's see here. My understanding, the old library building, when we had a candidate forum, the question came up, and one of the gentlemen that's running for office said he had some suggestions. And my understanding was it's pretty much locked in to be a Parks and Recreation building for the city. I know it's not finalized yet, but my understanding is pretty well a done deal. So it seems like a lot of people haven't gotten that message, and maybe I'm wrong. But it'd be interesting if that's what happens to it. It goes into a city building where we don't get any taxes out of it or anything else. And the last one, it sounds like I'm picking on you, Mayor, but I was at the city council meeting on Wednesday of last week when you deferred to give any kind of a salary adjustment to the city council members. I know it's a very political thing for a city council member to stand up and talk about getting a raise, but they haven't had a raise in 10 or 11 years. They're making $500 a month, and I know they're worth more than $500 a month, even though other people don't appreciate that. One of the reasons you said that they shouldn't get a raise is because the budget was already set.
30 more seconds.
It hasn't been set. It's just being done now, and it hasn't been approved, so I don't buy that logic. And I don't understand why you got a raise for each of the last 2 years. Well, okay. But anyway, I think they should get a raise. I think they deserve it, and it's just silly. 11 years, no raise. I don't think anybody would do that. And as far as being a stewardship for the city, that's fine. But I don't see any department heads taking a break on their salary. I don't see anybody else in the city doing that. It'd be nice if they did it by leadership. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Jim Miller, 30917 State Route 20, Sedro-Woolley. I'm a retired Marine, councilman, chief. Thank you for your words tonight. Thank you for the support that the council gives the military. We all appreciate it, even though you don't see it very often. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Anyone else? Okay, it is 8:04, and I am going to close public comment. We do not have any unfinished business. We're going to move right into new business, and we have a presentation tonight. So I want to ask Kayla Scott if she will come forward. Kayla Scott Bresler, if she'll come forward and do the presentation. And thank you for taking the time. I know you've been doing this around the county, but thank you for taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Good evening, council members, mayor. My name is Kayla Scott Bresler. I work for Skagit County Public Health, where I'm very involved in housing and homelessness programs. I'm here to talk to you tonight. Sorry, I should have listened to Aaron about how this clicker works.
We'll back it up for you.
Thank you. One more, I think. Nope, we're good. Next one. Yeah. I'm here to talk to you tonight about Substitute House Bill 1406, which passed during the 2019 legislative session. This is an opportunity that the legislature has given to every local jurisdiction in Washington state, cities, towns, and counties, to retain a portion of the state sales tax to dedicate to housing in their local communities. And as the gentleman commented earlier, it can be used for many different types of housing, including supportive housing. So the way this works is that a local jurisdiction would enact a resolution and an ordinance to get a credit against the sales tax they already owe to the state, and then that tax money can be distributed locally for a wide variety of housing purposes. There's some really important deadlines to keep in mind if the city is considering taking action under this bill. By January 28th of 2020, a jurisdiction must pass a resolution of intent to implement this tax retention mechanism, and they must pass an ordinance imposing the tax by July 28th of 2020. If either of those deadlines are missed, the jurisdiction forgoes its option to retain a portion of this tax, and the resources stay in the state coffers for general fund purposes. The maximum rates under this bill are split between cities and counties. So the maximum total rate is 0.0146% on taxable retail sales. And the way it works is that in a city, the county is entitled to half that share and a city is entitled to half that share, and that there are mechanisms in place to potentially enter into an agreement to cooperate on the use of those funds. The maximum amount of revenue to be received in any given year is capped based on the maximum sales tax at the time that this bill was passed. So tax receipts could go down over the course of the 20 years that this bill is in effect, but you're never going to see more revenue to your jurisdiction than at the time that the bill was passed, the tax rate applied to that sales tax revenue. I think you understand what I'm saying. So we put together, oops, there we go. There we go. We worked with a consultant, Susan Musselman, and then also got some data from MRSC on the countywide estimated revenue under this bill, as well as revenue by each jurisdiction. So you can see in this chart the taxable retail sales on the left, those are the large numbers, and then the rate split between the city and county. So you'll see in unincorporated Skagit County retains the full amount of the tax, which is $75,000 a year, and then you'll see equal amounts under potential county revenue and city revenue in each of the jurisdictions. So you'll see that Sedro-Woolley's share is just over $14,000 a year for 20 years. The total maximum countywide revenue, should everyone cooperate together, should all the jurisdictions retain this funding, is around $474,000 a year. Sorry.
You trying to go forward?
I'm trying to go back. I might have, if one of you has control over the slides, I might just
Why don't you say
point at
next
you.
slide,
Yeah.
and I'll go ahead.
Okay, thank you. There we go. So one of the really important considerations in this bill is that jurisdictions are specifically authorized to bond against this revenue. So you can get more money up front since this tax retention is guaranteed for 20 years. Given that much of the investment one might like to make in affordable housing is a capital investment, this bonding option is extremely powerful. The other reason that this bonding option is important is because once you bond, the legislature cannot take this funding away. Theoretically, the legislature could decide they want to cancel this local retention of sales tax in 5 or 7 years, but because the bill specifically allows for bonding, if you bond, they can't take the money away. Doug, I'm going to go to the next slide. Great. So jurisdictions have a few options here. The first option would be to just fail to abide by any of the deadlines, the resolution January deadline or the July ordinance deadline. If you were to do this, the tax revenue would default to Skagit County. Skagit County would then use that funding for affordable housing or supportive housing. The county has already passed a resolution of intent back in early August, and the commissioners are likely to pass an ordinance in the next couple of months. We're just working on a call for a public hearing to adopt the code on this legislation. Cities may also declare they're not going to impose the tax, which allows the county to retain a little bit extra until that January deadline passes, but it might be more logistically burdensome than it's worth to do so. The second option would be for the city to impose the tax and retain city control over the funds, invest those funds through a grant-making program with area nonprofits or private developers who are working on housing. The third option would be to impose the tax as the city and then enter into an interlocal agreement either with Skagit County or another public entity. You could enter into an interlocal agreement with the other cities in Skagit County or with the Housing Authority of Skagit County, the Housing Authority of Sedro-Woolley. There's a number of options. I mentioned earlier this bonding opportunity, which is a really good option if you're interested in making capital investments up front, if you have a lot of money to potentially leverage with state and federal sources, and if you have projects that are shovel ready and ready to go now. So if we were to, all the jurisdictions were to get together and collectively bond the total authorized revenue for the entire community, over a that would result in a maximum of around a $5 million bond. We put together some really conservative estimates of this because we know there's the possibility that the tax could decrease over the course of 20 years. Skagit County would be unlikely to bond the full 100% of revenue. More likely is that we would want to bond 80 or 50% of the revenue. So you see the different numbers up here in terms of what's possible in getting access to capital funds under the bill. The other thing you could do is just bond a portion of the revenue so you had funding left over for non-capital expenses such as rental assistance or operations and maintenance of housing. And lastly, you could decide to bond in year 3, year 5, year 7. These projects take some time to get together, so you want to make sure you have a strong pipeline before you go out and start paying that debt service. Someone in the audience asked about the eligible population. So with different affordable housing funding sources, there's different populations who are eligible to benefit. This is as broad as it gets. Anyone who makes less than 60% of the area median income could potentially qualify for this housing. I put the 2019 area median income 60% numbers up there by household size. But basically about 25% of Skagit County households would qualify for housing under this bill. However, I do want to note that either a jurisdiction or a developer could impose income restrictions that were more restrictive than what's allowed under the bill. The uses as well as the population are very broad when it comes to housing opportunities. This funding can be used for the acquisition, rehabilitation, or construction of housing. It can be used for operations and maintenance costs of new units of supportive housing, or it can be used for rental assistance to tenants. So I'm here tonight because Skagit County is interested in providing technical assistance to cities on housing issues, but also because we're interested in partnering with you on the implementation of this bill. The Board of County Commissioners have been meeting with the mayors of all of the cities, and there's been some good talks so far about possible cooperation. So I thought it would be good to give you a sense of what the affordable housing landscape looks like in Skagit County as you think about whether you'd want to impose this tax retention mechanism, whether you'd want to cooperate with Skagit County, and then also to tell you a little bit about the work we've been doing over the past few years. So in Skagit County, there's tremendous housing need, as there is all over Western Washington. We've got one of the lowest vacancy rates in the state, which makes it really difficult for folks to compete for housing, and then also, of course, raises housing prices more quickly. About a quarter of Skagit County renter households are paying more than half their income for housing, which leaves them little money to pay for school supplies, medicine, food, other things they need to maintain their health. And the most dire consequence of unaffordable housing is homelessness. And in last year, the Skagit County Housing Resource Center and its partners saw over 1,600 people experiencing homelessness over the course of the year in Skagit County, including 606 children under the age of 18. And across Washington state, as I mentioned, this shortage of housing for our workforce and for our elderly residents, for low-income residents, is severe, with only about 50 affordable and available units for every 100 very low-income renter households. So it's no surprise then that we see people paying much more than they can afford. I did put together some really rough numbers based on American Community Survey data of housing need by income in Skagit County. The red numbers indicate a shortage of housing units, and then the black numbers indicate a surplus. You can see that there's well over 2,500 unit shortage at the lowest income levels in Skagit County. This data is not perfect, but it's as good as we can get. It's an average over the 2011 to 2015 period, so it lags, and we know that our housing market changes very quickly, so it's not ideal, but it's the best we can use to estimate need. And these trends, where there's this shortage at the lowest income levels, are consistent nationwide, so this data is shocking, though not surprising. So over the last few years, the Skagit County Commissioners have really stepped up their affordable housing programs. We've got about 139 affordable homes, rental or home ownership, that have either been produced or in the pipeline to be funded and produced over the course of the next couple of years. The Commissioners have committed nearly $4.5 million in local and federal funding to these projects, and I thank you, the Council, and Mayor Johnson for joining the Skagit Home Consortium, because that's a big source of this funding. The county has a monitoring program to maintain the long-term affordability on all homes that are invested in, and the county also strives for county-wide investments. Here in Sedro-Woolley, the county investments have been largely around affordable home ownership, and we've partnered with Home Trust of Skagit and Habitat for Humanity. And of course, we want to get the most bang for our buck when we're investing in affordable housing, so we look to leverage state and federal dollars whenever possible. So I think that here in Sedro-Woolley, there's a lot of opportunity for new development. I know your market rate housing sector has been thriving. I know you have a strong housing authority and many nonprofits interested in working in your community. And I would say across the county, we see that our housing sector is getting more and more active as the recession is further and further behind us. So I wanted to give you a sense of sort of what money can buy when it comes to affordable housing. And these charts right here are sort of a best case scenario, assuming maximum leverage of federal and state dollars. So under this scenario, our community is paying a fairly low share of the overall cost of a housing project. So this scenario looks at a $5 million bond, a $3 million bond, and a zero bond with annual revenue achieved under this bill, assuming the cooperation amongst all the jurisdictions. So best case scenario, if we had projects ready to go right now, and the cities in the county went out together, put down a $5 million bond, fully leveraged that, I believe we'd be able to build up to 240 affordable homes in Skagit County, and that would leave a little bit of money left over for some rental assistance vouchers or to pay for operation and maintenance costs on supportive housing units. $3 million bond, 149 units of housing, and then of course if you didn't invest any of this money in capital dollars, there'd be a substantial amount left over for rental assistance, which would allow the community to support an additional 66 households each year. Like I said, the county's very interested in cooperation with the jurisdictions. There is a lot of opportunity to better leverage state and federal dollars if we cooperate. If we, go it alone, each jurisdiction's share is not enough to build a housing project, and it would be tremendously difficult to cooperate on submitting a project each year to the state and federal funders. It's more taxing for the nonprofit developers to have to apply to multiple jurisdictions for funding, and it doesn't set us up for success in competing with other jurisdictions to get state and federal funding. Of course, there's some administrative efficiencies to cooperation, and there's this opportunity for jurisdictions to get together, look at what the different population needs are, and assure that that need is being met somewhere in the county and that your citizens can benefit from it. The gentleman before mentioned the need for supportive housing. Skagit County is currently working with the city of Mount Vernon on a 70-unit supportive housing project in that city, and that's something that all Skagit County residents would be eligible for and benefit from if they need that service. And we're not going to necessarily be able to build a project like that in each community, but by cooperating, we can ensure that county-wide we are getting closer and closer to meeting each of those needs. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I know the bill mechanics are a little complicated. I can do my best there, and then also answer any questions about the county's housing programs or intent around cooperation.
All right. Questions?
Well, my only question is the vouchers for the rentals assistance. Is it possible for that to work in any way with existing buildings and landlords that are, buildings that are empty and, places that could be rented out that landlords aren't?
The bill is really flexible. So rental assistance could be tenant-based. So, someone could go to a nonprofit agency, get a housing voucher, and use that on the private market with any landlord that would be willing to accept it. Tenant rental assistance can be what we call project-based, meaning there could be an agreement between a jurisdiction or a nonprofit and a private entity that has an existing housing building or housing project or market rate building, saying we're reserving X number of these units for X number of years, and in exchange we're providing you a contract that pays this many dollars per unit per year. So you could certainly do that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes. Councilman Dion.
Hi, thanks so much, Kayla. I'm going to get in the weeds because I was in Olympia several times for this. As we know, it was the #1 legislative priority for the Association of Washington Cities. So I have a few questions, if I can get kind of granular. Could you explain what very low income is? It was on your slide there.
Sure. So the definition I am using there is below 50% of area median income.
50%?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Unfortunately, the data we have doesn't, the population breakouts don't always align with the eligibility breakouts, so there's a little bit of a gap.
Right. And then the bonding itself, is that a 20-year shelf life? So if municipalities or government agencies take their time to do this and they spend 5 years to do it, that means the program is only available for 15 years, right? Not for, the 20 years doesn't start when...
The 20 years starts when you impose the tax, and you have to impose the tax by July.
And if you don't impose the tax by July, then you don't qualify.
Yes.
Correct. Thank you. All right. And then the rental, you had rental assistance up there, which Councilmember Cornegay was talking about, the 66 vouchers. But I also saw in there that the priority was to look in Sedro-Woolley is to get folks into home ownership versus rental assistance. Could you talk a little bit more about why that is?
That's been a reactive approach we've had to date. The projects that have been put forth for county funding in Sedro-Woolley have tended to be affordable home ownership projects. It is unlikely that an affordable home ownership project would qualify for funding under this bill because they tend to serve folks who are in the 60 to 80% AMI income range. So this is almost exclusively a rental housing program. So yeah, that's historic, those affordable homeownership investments, but going forward, any investments in any jurisdiction with this revenue would likely be rental housing oriented. Does that make sense?
Yes. The other part of this is, I have further questions, is I saw on the screen there about the supply.
Yeah.
Did I see that correctly, that 50, if we can go back to that slide, that would be great. Please and thank you.
I think it's back one or two more. That one.
That one. So I'm seeing at 60% AMI that we have a surplus of units.
Yeah, it's a little bit misleading. I think, market rate housing at this time when this data existed was likely close to that 80% to 100% AMI range.
Because it's 2011 to 2015.
Yeah, so you'll see there's this false deficit at over 100% AMI, and it just means market rate housing wasn't priced that high at that time. I don't know if that helps clarify at all.
It would make me want to dig into the numbers further when appropriate.
May I just make a comment, though? I know you had a question about the owning. So it's my understanding that actually when you do affordable housing for people, it actually allows them the opportunity to save and move forward and to eventually buy their own home. So this is not necessarily something that should be a permanent thing, but rather to help people, encourage them to move on and own for themselves. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. It's very difficult to save if you're spending all of your income in rent. And I did misspeak earlier when I said home ownership programs focus on 60 to 80% AMI. Habitat for Humanity in particular tends to focus at lower income levels, so I did misspeak there.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. So we have 3 implementation options. One is to do nothing. Is it possible to go back to that slide, please? Yeah, do nothing. So then our $14,000 goes to the county.
Yes.
Right. So we would be leaving money on the table. Number 2 is impose the tax, retain city control over the use of the funds. Is that what Anacortes is doing?
Anacortes City Council has not yet made a decision. They are considering all 3 of these options.
Fantastic. Right, good. Thank you for that clarity. And then 3, impose the tax and enter into interlocal agreement with county or other public entity. This is where what I'm supporting, because then we can pool our money larger, as you gave that a great example of the difference between the $5 million and $3 million bond, about the efficacy of that money. And that's the purpose of what they did in Olympia, was to provide that tool. So now the question is, if we get into an interlocal agreement with the county, or as you gave other examples like the Housing Authority of Sedro-Woolley or the Housing Authority of Skagit County, how will that quorum of people, that plenary of people, how will those people be decided upon to be the deciders, and how will they go about figuring out where to put those projects, so I can go back to my ward and say the $14,000 that we're spending, that we've received in Sedro-Woolley, is helping out people in Sedro-Woolley and also helping people around the county. That's kind of the crux of what I'm trying to get to. How do we have influence of our own money?
Yeah, there's definitely some governance questions that would need to be worked out. I don't know, Mayor, if you want to say anything about that, but it's to be determined at this point, from my perspective.
So, and that's a discussion that I want to actually have with you. I think that should be determined by the council itself.
Okay.
Yeah, where you want that money to go. But a lot of it will depend on what the council decides to do as far as option 1, 2, or 3.
Right.
So we're just kind of on the cusp of this.
Right, just putting out my spaghetti on the wall, if you will.
That's great. That's great.
So very crucial that we work together, in my opinion, on this to leverage those funds to help folks out, especially as Mr. Hayden brought out, in the supportive housing that we don't have in this county, and to move forward, especially help folks out that are vulnerable, that might need not necessarily the fish, but the fishing pole, which I'm interested in. I had one other question. It'll come to me.
I have a question, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
A little bit misleading, or I'm not understanding in the language of impose the tax, because initially it was explained this is sales tax dollars that are already collected that would
right.
normally go to, so just because taxes are a big issue, and so this is keeping sales tax dollars locally that would normally go to the state, correct?
Correct.
Not imposing new tax.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope Mike Anderson hears that when he listens to this.
And actually, if we chose to do nothing, would that money not go to the county, as I understood it?
That money would go to the county.
Right, exactly. So it wouldn't be lost completely. The county would have a say-so over
So
what
long
that...
as the Board of County Commissioners enacts their ordinance.
Right, okay.
If you look at page 211, section 1 of the resolution that's in the packet and is certainly available as possible action for the council tonight, has the language about the tax itself. It does not use the word impose. Just to be really clear about that, it is not a new tax. It is state sales tax that will either go to the state general fund, the county's low-income housing fund, or a portion of it will go to the city's low-income housing program.
I would just put out with that clarification to the rest of the council, I would be in support of keeping our tax dollars local, and I think a cooperative effort is the best foot forward in this endeavor. So that's where I stand.
Madam Mayor, can I ask clarification on that? Are you looking at number 2 or number 3 then?
I actually think that that's something that the council has to decide.
I'm sorry, Jared. I'm working through the mayor through the process. Thanks.
I think as long as we can keep Skagit County honest.
That's why I'm asking about who's on the board.
As long as we have some control and some say, I would be in favor of the interlocal agreement.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of just giving the money to the county and hoping that they throw us a bone every once in a while. So.
Thank you for that. And I've remembered my third part. Thank you. Okay. There's a 3-step process to this, and this is a wonderful flow chart in here. And so that's what we're talking about is the resolution of intent. And that's what's could be before us tonight. Thank you for the work on that. And then secondly, if that passes, then there would be a vote of the people. All right? No?
No.
Okay, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, so the 3 steps are resolution of intent, could be tonight. The second step is the adoption of an ordinance.
There we go.
That has to be prior to the magic date, July 28, 2020. But there's no reason to wait that long.
Right.
The third step would be if we're looking at either option 2 or 3 is how do you spend it. Right. Option 3, and I think the recommendation that I'm certainly supporting for you to consider is that we go into an interlocal agreement with the county, let them administer the funds, because I believe that would deliver the most bang for our buck. If you didn't do that, there's still the third step, which is option 2, develop our own program and figure out how we're going to spend the money. So either way, there's got to be a way for the money to leave the city and go out and do good things.
Well, I'm just really interested that we make the deadlines and that we have a fully transparent process.
We're going to make sure
for that. Yeah, just reinforcing that, and look forward to working toward an interlocal agreement, and really look forward to the details of how that board comes across who's going to be making the decisions. Thank you so much, Ken.
Sure. Are there any other questions for Kayla?
Excuse me.
So Kayla, I want to thank you again for coming. There is some of it that it feels a little bit convoluted, but really it's quite simple and straightforward. It's money that the state wants to bring back into our county, and certainly we want to take advantage of that. Aaron and I have actually talked about this quite a bit. We really would like to see an interlocal agreement happen. We're hoping that the council will agree with that. We'll have some discussion regarding that. So anyway.
Thank you for your time.
Yep.
So I guess from staff perspective here, is this something you want to do tonight? Do you want to see this resolution of intent come back to you at the next meeting? How do you want to get step 1 done?
I have a comment there. I would prefer not to do this tonight, just because in going over it tonight, I realize there's things I'd like to be a little bit more. I didn't quite get through that part of the packet, and I knew we were having a presentation, so I thought, okay. but I'd like to go back and read through some of it. So if we could wait till the next meeting at least before we make any decisions.
So I see heads nodding. I'm
Yes, it's
hearing.
the first read.
Yeah, right. So, all right, well, we'll bring it back then to the next council meeting.
We will.
And talk about it.
Mayor, we were looking for comments. The resolution intent looked good, and I don't have anything to add or take away. Thank you.
Good, thank you. All right, anything else? If not, that is it. Unless there's anything for the good of the order, without objection, we are adjourned.
Thank you.